okay?
Yes, sir. How you doing?
Oh, great, great.
22nd or 29th.
How you doing? Hey, John.
I guess
I'm sorry.
All right, the meeting,
No, not at all.
I'd like to call the meeting of the Transition Planning Commission to order. And if we could take a moment now of silence and give some good thought to the tasks that we have before us. Thank you. I think maybe as this process goes on, our silent meditation will maybe longer and longer.
We need all the help we can get.
Because it may take longer and longer to ask for discernment. Okay. You have had the minutes in your possession. Do I hear a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any additions or corrections or deletions from these minutes? Hearing none, all in favor of the minutes say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the minutes are approved. I really don't. There's so many things going on, but I think they will be covered in our committee reports tonight. So I don't have anything, especially in the chair's report. I would like to move to the open issues, which is the basic education plan presentation. We had intended to have that presentation on the 16th. Due to the meeting that we're holding with the municipal mayors and the fact that really this presentation needs to have really a longer amount of time than an hour, then we are going to postpone that. And why don't we just say that we're going to have that on the 22nd? On the 22nd. Yes.
Which one on the 22nd?
The BEP, the Basic Education Plan, and along with that will be a short presentation also on the governor's on the governor's budget and how that would affect education. So it's
March 22nd.
Excuse me, March 22nd. Thank you, Mr. Pickler. We need to get this right this time, or somebody's going to wring my neck on this. But this is an important presentation, but it just seemed like that we would have too much in one day if we did this on the 16th, and we just could not give them the amount of time that they needed. We'll move on to the committee reports, and the first, let me go back to let me just do this here on the Administrative Organization and Governance Committee before I call on Mr. Pickler and Mr. Jones to make that report. We are approaching a time where the TPC will be asked to consider the way that that our merged Shelby County schools will be organized structurally. In the beginning of our deliberations about process and decision-making process, we said that all recommendations would come from the committee to the TPC for a vote, and that there could be some decisions that the chair could exercise the option of bringing out to the full committee a little earlier than with just one recommendation. And this is a situation in which I am going to exercise that option. This is a very important decision. It really cuts across all areas, and so rather than have the Administrative Organization Committee come forth with one option and not allow the full committee to see the others, then I'm going to bring that out for full discussion. what we will be doing, well, I'm going to let Mr. Pickler talk about the process from then, and can you give the dates and those kinds of things, Mr. Jones, as we are going to do that? You were there the whole time that I spoke. But basically, you will be getting a full deck of slides and past information that this committee has used, and we will spend the entire session on the 23rd, is it? Is that the next one? Or, not next meeting, but the next. And at the same time, we will also, in fact, we will be doing that first because the Educational Services Committee is working very diligently to come forth with what they are terming as key priorities, not the individual. They will have many recommendations, specific recommendations, but just basically the priorities. Dr. Johnson will speak to that more next time, but I just wanted to know that those are two very important decisions that will be brought to the full commission. And so, Mr. Jones, Mr. Pickler, would you like to give an update on the administrative organization governance?
I'll start off and then let Martavis take over. Over the course of the past couple of weeks, or several weeks, the committee has been looking at lots of information, lots of best practices from across the country. We began a process a week ago. Actually 2 weeks ago, beginning to identify a process that would allow us to identify some models and what would be the various elements of what these models would look like in terms of the administrative governance. It was then determined that multiple models would be considered by the committee. And today we looked at a proposal or a presentation from BCG that incorporated 3 different models. One that represented a unified model that is representative of what you see in Gwinnett County, in Montgomery County in Maryland, and also in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. And this is where you have, again, the more centralized administration, centralized governance, but that incorporated 4 different regional structures. The second model.
6.
I'm sorry, forgive me, 6. Thank you very much. The second model is the chancellor model that we've heard discussed, and that was used principally in the New York City district from 1990 to the year 2000. It involves, once again, 6 different districts, but it's far more decentralized in terms of the governance responsibilities and what is engaged at the regional or the sub-district areas. And then the third model that was seen for the first time today is it's basically a path to autonomy. And the board, the committee had a vibrant conversation about this model, which incorporates elements of what's seen in Denver, Colorado, what's seen in New Orleans, and in other districts, whereby you can incorporate a number of different models, including charter schools, including even multiple charter organizations. So next week, the committee will continue its discussion, continue to vet out a number of different areas in terms of how both the educational product, how the special needs, our alternative schools, a lot of issues are resolved. And at this point, it appears it's going to be a fascinating debate and a conversation to be able to bring to this committee on the 23rd.
Mr. Jones, do you have anything to add?
The only thing that I would add would be, and I thank Chairwoman Prescott for the recommendation that this would come before the entire committee, because with everything that's taking place in the background, we need to know, and I think it would be beneficial for the committee for the entire TPC, to know what the strengths and the weaknesses are of each one. And so what you're going to be able to do is have some of the same background information that we've had, and it looks at a number of different models when you talk about centralized versus a decentralized type of structure, one that looks at a model as radical, if you would, for lack of a better word, as New Orleans, to some of the more traditional models. So I think that when you receive this information, this is going to be pretty much our first major recommendation, and I just want to impress upon everyone, when you make sure when you receive this information, you'll receive it in advance. Make sure that you ask questions. You'll have enough time to stew on it, but make enough time to have questions. I'm sure there will be additional questions, but I think it's important that the entire committee knows what the pros are, what the cons are of each one of those, and I think it's too important of a decision for just a committee of 4 to 5 to make a decision that will have so far-reaching implications.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. And the next committee is Dr. Green. He had the floor completely last week, and so, Dr. Green.
The assessment committee report we presented last week. We've not had another meeting. However, we did receive some feedback from the report in terms of additional concerns that need to be addressed, and we will be meeting to address those additional concerns.
Thank you, sir. Communications and community engagement. Ms. Bradshaw?
Yes, ma'am. So we are having one-on-one, and just thank all of the committee members who have been participating as either facilitators or presenters at the meetings that we've had thus far at the listening sessions. We still have a few listening sessions in the next 2 weeks, so I would still you have ample opportunity to continue to participate if you would like. I strongly believe that these are helpful in helping us to understand the perspective of our community. There is one in particular that I'd like everyone to know. On February the 20th at Colonial Middle School, we will be having a youth listening session where there will be youth from both city and county schools coming together to have a discussion about what their vision is for public education. And so the adult portion of that meeting is from 6 to 7:30, but youth will begin to come at 4:30 to frame their discussion and prepare to be a part of the listening session. We also will be bringing, in our committee meeting today, we had a presentation from Red Deluxe around the website, and was just highly impressed with the materials that they created. The committee has asked for some tweaks, and we will be bringing that information to you potentially next week, depending on the how much time is allocated. And then also in the committee, we talked about intentionally reaching out to teacher and staff to ensure that they're engaged in this process, and then also families who are not just traditionally participating in this process, so creating plans for their participation. But as we move forward with specific actions, we will bring those to you all for participation.
Thank you, Ms. Bradshaw.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
I would just like to say that this report that came from the Communication Committee is just outstanding, and I couldn't let it go by without saying how it's just good reading, and it just links the work with the community and gives us a good indication of how the community is reacting to our work. Just a powerful report.
Thank you very much for that encouragement, and that the work of the Communication and Community Engagement Committee has been extensive, continues to be. We've had great support. I know that you would agree, Ms. Bradshaw, from our Boston Consulting team, and good support from those of you. I'd like to say I have been to a listening tour on every night of a listening tour. I can't be at 2 of them, so I'm always at just 1 of them. But it's always good to see in the audience 1 or 2 of our commission members. It just is very good support, and in the last few listening sessions, we actually have had all along the support of the Shelby County School Board members, and we're very deliberate at this point of inviting them to join us in their areas. But they've been quite good. All right. Educational Services, Dr. Johnson and Mr. Keel, Professor Keel, I should say.
Dr. Prescott, ladies and gentlemen, the Educational Services Committee has indeed been busy. As we identified some 40 key things that are going to happen in the classroom, and after a listening session last week, that number has jumped up to 41. This came from a parent, a very important item that we will address. The data has been gathered from both school districts, templates completed as late as this morning. We are now ready to go through a preliminary process of identifying the priority themes that relate to the classroom. We hope to have those ready a preliminary list and bring it to you not later than the 23rd. Seems like we're going to meet for 2 days on the 23rd.
We may have lunch. We may have dinner that night.
Yeah, okay. So we will bring them for your input and revision on the 23rd. Again, thanks to everyone for their task force meetings and diligence.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. And I would like to say on that, Dr. Johnson and Professor Keel have shown great leadership, as have the leaders within the subcommittees, Dr. Smirelli, Dr. Green, and Daniel, have you been basically chairing that support subcommittee? I believe, as I think we all do, that this is the heart of what our plan is. And really, these priority areas will really be the basis. We talked about our vision. They really will constitute our vision in terms of what as a district we want to be. So that's really important. And then the other conversation we had in the executive committee, and I think it's important to mention because we talked about the data that we looked at last week in the assessment committee. And that data will be, as we establish these priority areas, that data feeds to that and will very definitely be very important as we make individual recommendations because that data was so revealing in terms of student mobility, in terms of test scores, in terms of graduation rates and attendance and those kinds of things. And those are the things that we'll be looking at. So thank you, both of you, for your work. All right, Mr. Cates, Finance Committee.
Couple of quick things. I would start out with a shout out to a few people who are ad hoc members. So I think we've all gotten to know each other as commission members, but on the Finance Committee, Bill Rhodes, CEO of AutoZone, but with a financial background, Marlon Mosby, who's done a lot of muni finance stuff, and Alan Graff, who's CFO of FedEx, have all agreed to serve on that, and Bill and Marlon have been at every meeting. So if you see them, thank them. So we've met 2 out of the last 3 Mondays. We will meet every other Monday if anybody's ever interested in joining. And then those Mondays we do not have official meetings. I'm still going to meet with the consultants to go through a lot of stuff without decision-making stuff, just more preparing for the committee meetings or for full commission meetings where a decision does need to be made. And so what they're working on the most now is a pre-merger baseline. So the city budgets are clear and well presented, as are the county budgets, but trying to get those into one language that we can then go forward and make decisions on one set of books, if you will. So that just takes a lot of reconciling of language and categories and stuff like that. And that is getting close to a point where y'all will begin to see this pre-merger baseline hopefully in about a week. And we'll send that to you where it's a simply presented categories of important revenues and expenses, at least that we think is the best presentation. And then, we can all decide things from there. We'll also have, over time, we'll try to project out what those would look like in a static way in 3 to 5 years versus what we all hope they'll look like if things are done more efficiently or we save money in different places or whatever different committees come up with. And to that point, as you can imagine, our most important interlock committees are HR and logistics. So Chris and Richard, who head those up, are obviously on the Finance Committee, but a lot of things are going back and forth between those 3. I would submit that none of them can do their own job without the other 2. And so, not surprisingly, our BCG consultants on these 3 committees are the same. So there's, good communication there, and that's it for now.
Thank you, Mr. Cates. Ms. Richards, HR, Personnel?
Just wanted to-
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Excuse me.
Stanley, are the BEP calculations factored into the financial committee's work?
They are, for now. There is no, until we have more of this BEP understanding and presentation, we're not going to make any dramatic assumptions in differences in trajectory of that or their underlying revenues. So right now, that's a pretty straightforward number until we hear otherwise and learn otherwise. And so there will be this full BEP presentation to this commission. But before that, way before that, we need to be talking to them about the mechanism, and we're already asking questions that are making both CFOs rip their hair out as we try to understand simple things that they already know about BEP and everything else.
Any other questions? Ms. Richards?
The HR and Personnel Committee met a week ago Wednesday. We meet every other Wednesday at 3 o'clock right here. Anyone is welcome to join who would like to come. We had the pleasure of having presentations and a chance to have a question and answer session with the two general counsels of the Memphis City Schools and the Shelby County Schools, Dorsey Hobson and Valerie Speakman, and we genuinely appreciate the time that they spent meeting with us. We reviewed four particular issues. First, each of the general counsels went through the way that they see the entity and structure of the situation with the schools after the merger. Secondly, we went through the history and the status of all of the labor agreements between the Memphis City Schools and their various labor unions. We obtained from each of the general counsels an understanding of the obligations as they see them, which of the TPC with respect to compensation, benefits, tenure, and other matters under Norris Todd. And then we had an opportunity to receive from them their explanation of the differences between the two systems with respect to HR and personnel matters. And then perhaps the most helpful part of the session was a short summary of things that we should be aware of as the HR Personnel Committee as we start our work. So it was a very useful session. I'm grateful to the time they spent and to our committee members who were able to attend with me and get the benefit of their learning.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Richards? Mr. Green, Dr. Green?
Is your committee doing any work with teacher effectiveness and leadership effectiveness?
At this point, we will. We have not started any part of the work on what evaluations or effectiveness might look like in the future. Our next step will be to understand compensation, benefits, and tenure for teachers. We will ultimately have to get to the evaluation, promotion, and structure of the new system, but that's pretty far down the road. Right now, we're just trying to get our arms around the base information.
Would it be of any benefit to know the number of highly effective teachers that we currently have, as opposed to the number we need? For, as I understand the process at level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the question that I would raise is how many level 5 teachers do we currently have on board, and what does that mean in terms of forward movement?
Yeah, that's the kind of base information we're trying to get our arms around. I think it's very important to know that.
And Dr. Green, is that some additional data that your committee intends to collect?
Yes, that would be an area. I have not had an opportunity to talk with the full committee, and we have not had a meeting, but at the next meeting we would be asking the committee if that is something that they would pursue and collect some data in terms of level of effectiveness of teaching personnel.
Thank you. Mr. Pickler.
Thank you, Chairman Prescott. Dr. Green, I would very gently suggest that you might want to be a little bit careful about using the term highly effective teacher and only restricting that to those who are level 5. The state of Tennessee describes what they call as a rock-solid teacher as someone who's a level 3. And there is great debate among the state as to the evaluation processes going forward. And so I would just caution you about trying to limit your conversation about highly effective teachers to those who are listed as a 5. This is the first year of the new evaluation process. It still has many bugs to be worked out.
So let me play back what I heard you say, because I want to be crystal clear on this. You're saying if we're talking about teacher effectiveness, we should be speaking to level 3, 4, and 5.
I think
Absolutely.
so.
Okay. I think that would be a good standard to work with.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Pickler and Ms. Bradshaw.
And Mr. Pickler actually brought it up in a piece in his observation around we're in the first year of the teacher evaluation, so just will be cautious around looking at last year's data and what this year's data is going to tell. I know that both districts can provide that information, but they will be substantively different based upon the new evaluation measures that are in place this year.
And I'm correct, because that rating at this point is based solely on the TVOS data. Is that correct? I do think that it is very important data to collect and probably to look at where those teachers are located, too, in terms of that. Certainly not wanting, just knowing how many more teachers we need to recruit, because we certainly wouldn't want to take away an outstanding teacher from any classroom, but it would help us to know where the trouble spots are and that kind of thing. Ms. Bradshaw?
And I think that effectiveness should be a measure as we're looking for recruitment, but there is also data on projected retirement and what are the traditional projected non-reelects that can be provided that can help give guidance around staffing needs that should be also included in that conversation.
As well as those teachers that could be developed to move up to the one level. All right, thank you very much. Mr. Holden, logistics.
Logistics met yesterday at our new location, Memphis City Schools 321. We thank Dr. Barker for providing us with that location to meet at our new time, noon to 2 p.m. And we had a great presentation by Mr. Tommy Hart regarding facilities, brought forth detailed data on maintenance, custodial, and utilities cost between the two districts, and narrowed that down to cost per square foot for use in future work with the committee. And we're still in the information gathering phase of our work. We also had presentation by Ms. Avery on nutrition. We had the two district nutrition directors at our meeting who were given the floor to explain differences and similarities between their departments within the two districts, and we have some more work to do in that area. We will be meeting every other week in the future as we have scheduled this going forward, and on February 22nd we meet again, and at that time we will have presentations with information in the technology information area and the purchasing or procurement area. So it's in Memphis City School Administration Building, 321, noon to 2 p.m. if those are interested in attending.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. Any questions of Mr. Holden? One of the issues from the executive committee that we discussed tonight is that as our committee work is progressing, we are all receiving reports from our consultant and collecting analysis of data. We're not talking about all the raw data, but we are going to try to be very diligent about getting all of those reports from our partners, our BCG partners, on the website so that they can be shared, so that you will have a foundation when these recommendations come forth. So we are good on some committees with that, and then there are others that we have to do a little catching up. Any questions of any of the committee chairs? I'll have to say that was very informative, and thank you, Ms. Bradshaw, last week for bringing up the fact, and also Ms. Richards, that this is really something that as we work, it is good to hear from every committee that has met, even if you think you haven't done that much. It seems like that there is a lot of work going on. I appreciate the work that you're all doing. All right, the next item on the agenda is, I believe, Nika, are you going to do that? Our Boston consultant partners spent some time, as they did with us, speaking with the Shelby County School Board members. We have all said throughout the process that we need to be understanding, communicating with each other, being knowing that we're on the same page or we're not, so we can get there, and that kind of thing. So tonight These interviews have been completed, and Nika is going to share information with us.
Thank you, Barbara. This is in your packets. I apologize that we can't present. I don't have it in PowerPoint, it turns out. As much as we do PowerPoint, I don't have a copy of this in PowerPoint, just a PDF. So we'll read it off. It's 2 pages. It's in summary form, similar to what we've done in the communication with the listening sessions. But I did think that it was important enough to just highlight a couple of things for you. Again, we had conversations with all of the board members and asked them similar questions about hopes, aspirations, but also advice. And the hopes and the aspirations are very similar to the hopes and the aspirations that came out of this body prior to the visioning session. And as you know, they have adopted the guiding principles. So the affirming of the fact that you are hoping for the same, with the same vision was there. They did have some advice, though, which is what's on these 2 pages. The first page is really about engagement. And if you look at the key themes and supporting quotes, it's similar again to the communication document that we provided. But everything on what is called page 0 is keep the board engaged, engage the community, engage the staff, engage the government leaders, engage the business leaders, engage the faith-based community. They said, make sure that we're engaged. And there's lots of different quotes, and we heard it to a person that this was something that they were concerned about and wanting to just make sure that there were enough opportunities to make sure that the board was engaged and or that these different stakeholder groups were engaged. I will pause for a minute in the first bucket because we heard very clearly from them that they wanted to be kept in the loop and to not have surprises. So specifically, don't wait until there's a plan and then give them a plan as there are decisions and as there is rationale for the decisions to make sure that we're sharing that. Now, there are mechanisms to do that in the joint committee, in the joint participation of Mr. Jones and Mr. Pickler, so they were happy with that. They just raised the point in a couple of different quotes that you see here. They want to avoid surprises, and they want to know the decisions and recommendations as they're made as opposed to at the end when they come together as a summary document, which obviously is fair. And the rest, in the point of engaging the other stakeholder groups, it was primarily positioned as there are concerns, and as much as you can inform people, please do, and invite others to be part of this. Invite the staffs to know what's going on and to be part of this, and invite the government leaders and the business leaders to be part of the solution process as well. Any questions on the first page? Yes, Mr. Green.
Could you say a little more about the process of carrying information to the board? Who will take that information to the board, and how will we have? What will the commission? Will the commissioners have approved something that's going to them? How will that occur?
Dr. Green, actually, since we started, I have spoken to the board at each of their meetings, which they meet once a month. I don't go to the work session, but I go to their actual meetings. Now, up until this point, we've really not had any recommendations to share, but I have shared with them our committee structure, how it relates specifically to the various items in the Norris Todd bill. I've shared with them our guiding principles, and of course they responded with that affirmation of that. I've shared with them the frequently asked questions, the questions that are coming up as we were really our whole organizational process. I very much appreciate their comments and have assured them that as we make decisions, that is one mechanism. Now, there could be others that we want to adopt, but I anticipate continuing to go at each of their meetings monthly and providing them at any point that a recommendation is imminent or has been brought forth to the committee, informing them of that. In that way, that is one avenue and process that is in place and has been in place and will continue.
I was just concerned if we would, are we going to get feedback from them? Say, for instance, we've made a decision. Will there be some way we will know the sentiments of that body relative to the decisions that we've made, so it just won't be information, but it'll be a two-way
Right.
communication process?
Yeah. David, can you speak to that, or do you have a suggestion?
So there are a couple of ways that we could do this. We could do this in a way that is structured, and we specifically survey the board after we provide recommendations, and we can summarize that, and then they could provide anonymous but informed commentary. We can do that via both the website, that's being set up, or through another mechanism. But that is a relatively impersonal option. It will be very fast is the benefit of that, and you could do it very regularly every time we had something that goes to the board as a recommendation. The other alternative is that we could, at a frequency of every couple of months, do something similar to this, which is having individual conversations, whether it be facilitated by us or by you. I think that one of the things that they were happy about was that the process that was set up to do things in the board meeting and to hear the commentary. I think that they were looking for an opportunity to be able to have conversations as well if necessary. So there are different ways that we could do that.
What would you suggest?
I think that, right now, what Dr. Prescott's doing is very helpful. I know that that Dr. Prescott has a lot of credibility with the board, and I think that as we move forward, and I think this is a little bit what we talked about in the executive committee meeting, as we move forward as this commission in making decisions, I think being able to have Dr. Prescott there and really discussing those and engaging the board as much as possible, certainly inviting them to be a part of the meetings and sitting here and be engaged and hear the full debate. I think anything we can do to have as transparent a conversation as we possibly can is going to be the most helpful thing that we can do.
So, Mr. Pickler, can I?
Go ahead.
On that, they did specifically ask that as there are critical things like the February 23rd meeting, to provide them that agenda so that they could make plans to attend if possible. And that was actually something that I thought was a good request.
One other possibility, and it just came to mind right now, and Mr. Pickler and Mr. Jones, you may want to think about that. While the board meeting itself is rather formal and there is not the give and take, it might be a possibility when we are making recommendations to be a part of your work session agenda if there is more opportunity in that agenda to actually discuss a recommendation. We could look at that as a possibility.
Yeah, Bob, I was going to add to that. The fact that we only meet monthly, there really isn't a lot of there really are not a lot of opportunities for David or for me to, unless I have some colleagues on the school board who are in the audience now, but I think particularly an invitation to the 23rd meeting and will be very vital to some of the decisions that will be made. And I say that Memphis City Schools, when we went through our RGA training, some of the same models that we've talked about in our administrative and organization meeting, some of those models are things that led to our decision to have the type of theory of action for change that we have. Some of that same training is taking place for the entire 23-member school board, and I think that although it's still preliminary, we've only had one weekend of sessions or two days. It's going to be important because the board, still based upon the limited instruction that they've had in that area, it's going to be, they could be leaning towards one way or the other. So the fact, I would even think, and after hearing the comment about that, I would almost recommend that we have some type of joint meeting on the 23rd. May not be logistically possible, but I think that with all of the moving parts that are taking place, and with the board having some information and background and knowledge of this particular area here, particularly with more coming, I don't want it to be one of those things where we come up with one but the board, based upon the somewhat intensive training and information that it's receiving, to say, well, we think that we need to go in a different direction.
I'm going to have to, I'm not going to have to, I'm going to recognize Mr. Hart, and then I'll circle back, Mr. Pickler, to you.
I'm assuming that is the school board being copied on all our agenda times?
Yes.
I'm talking about the committee meetings as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. The committee meetings are on a calendar. The school board, at the present time, the school board is being copied on all of our meeting times, our minutes, our materials, everything that comes to this commission as a whole goes at the same time to, does it go to the staff for them to disseminate to the board. We do not, at this point, send out committee notices, but the notices are on the calendar.
Okay,
We could do that if that's.
But they're all available, and they've been informed
Correct.
of where to go for those. Because this is a critical aspect of it. I don't deny that, but I guess I've been somewhat surprised that we haven't seen more board members at our meetings, to be frank with you. And I believe the communication folks are doing an outstanding job at communicating what we're doing, when we're doing it, and so I guess I would say it sounds like that they're depending on Mr. Pickler and Mr. Jones to be their communication link, and they don't need to do that. All of our phone numbers, all of our email addresses are out there, and so I think there's plenty of opportunity to have the linkage they're looking for. It's just they need to pick it up and do it.
Having said that, Mr. Hart, I have failed to recognize the school board members that are in the audience tonight. And so I see Ms. Millott, I see Ms. Jones, who, Ms. Millott, raise your hand. Ms. Jones waved at hers. Are you the two that are here? We have had a number of members that have come, and we have had some good participation when we have offered joint presentations. Mr. Pickler, I need to call on you first, and then I'll go to you, Ms. Bradshaw.
Great. I'll be brief. And Martavis and I really are. We're thinking a lot of issues, but on the issue of having a joint meeting, I don't necessarily know that would be in the best interest of this body. This body has a unique charge, and while I think that we should encourage all board members to attend and to hear all of the deliberations, I do think that this body has been given the responsibility to go through, do the work to deliberate, and then to come up with a recommendation. And certainly we need to get feedback. And if we're moving in the wrong direction, we need to hear that. But I think that to open it up in the form of a joint meeting might short-circuit the process and the good debate that I want to hear from this committee, and give this body the opportunity to fully vet out these issues and make the very best recommendation that we can. But again, that in no way would be trying to be excluding board members being here, giving their input and suggestions and talking to us. But I do think that this body needs to be given the opportunity that's being empowered to do, and that is to come up with a great decision.
Okay. Ms. Bradshaw?
I was just going to say, in the Community and Communications Committee, the school board created a parallel committee that we have 2 members who serve on our committee who are non-voting, who serve and actually do the parallel work for Shelby County Schools at the same time, and it has been extremely helpful and supportive of the process. And so some of the co-chairs may think about extending an invitation to board members to ask them if they would be interested in coming to a meeting or even serving, and then they were clear about the non-voting capacity and were very supportive of that.
Thank you. Mr. Jones and then Mr. Keel.
And I guess my issue is more so in the spirit of trying to keep with the letter of the law as it relates to the Sunshine Law. And as well-intended as I may be in having a conversation with a colleague about this, because this is something that could be deliberated, I don't have an opportunity outside of a regular board meeting in order to do so. And so the fact that the school board meets only once a month without their being present here and having some type of joint meeting, I just see it as, the TPC can be headed in one direction, the school board can be headed in another, and it's because still by Norris Todd and by Judge Mays' ruling, the final authority still rests with the school board, and so I think that we don't want our first major decision to be one that the school board, and it may not happen, but summarily rejects because they feel that they were not engaged in the process and didn't have enough information as it related to this.
Professor Keel?
So during the conversation on administrative structure committee, it was stated, I think, that we will get the materials in advance to review, all the stuff that you guys have been talking about in committee. And I assume that means in advance of the 23rd, and that we would eventually vote on the 23rd. I would suggest that the board members be provided that same information and be given an opportunity to reach out to any one of us, anyone on the administrative structure committee, to offer feedback based on that information and the choices that we're going to have in front of us.
Okay. Actually, we will be getting materials in advance on the 23rd. I anticipate that we won't take a vote on the 23rd, that we will be discussing that deeply, that we'll come back and probably come back the next week. There are some mechanisms or ways that we certainly, I think it's well noted that we want to make it clear to our school board that that day is going to be, that meeting will be considering a very critical recommendation, and then on an ongoing basis let them know when specific recommendations are going to be considered. And I think there are ways that we can develop possibilities to receive feedback and still afford this body because the time that we have to discuss this, in as much as we won't be voting on it on the first night. Anyway, we would have some time to get feedback. Dr. Green.
That was just one issue, but I think you've done an outstanding job of serving as a linkage between the school board and us and making those reports. But my concern is that if we create something that the school board does not look on favorably, that we would have some way of knowing that on issue by issue.
Yes, I think that's a point well taken, and we will work on developing some process to at least get some feedback. Ms. Richards.
Yeah, my concern on this, our charter is very clear. We are to develop the plan, and while I am fully supportive of the inclusion of all the ideas that come from all of the constituents, we are not a political body. And I would hate to see the work of this committee derailed by folks who do have a primary interest that is in part political. There's going to be a lot of work going on here over a time period where there's a lot of uncertainty about who will ultimately be the board that we will live with past the merger. I would love to think that all of our board members are statesmen, thinking about the next generation. But unfortunately, as the old quote goes, unfortunately some politicians think about the next election. So I think we need to get feedback. Nobody wants to put together a plan that the Shelby County School Board can't approve. But at some point in time, I'm very fearful there will be differences between what we see as the best way forward for the children in this community and what may be the input from the school board or individual members of the school board. So I would just caution us to remain true to our charter as we talk about this process.
Are there other comments? I think this is clearly, and having been a school board member, I have an affection for school board members, actually, and believe that by and large, of all office holders except Shelby County mayors, then they are truly serving. Really, I've always said of school board members, they serve the only population that can't vote. And so I have found that by and large that they are truly looking out for the best interests of children. But I do think we do have to remain aware that there was a process set in place whereby we as a commission would produce a plan. It sounds to me that what we need to do is really find ways to balance that very carefully so that we get input from the board, that we continually output to them and make them aware of what we're doing. But that, you know, we do have different roles at this point. But in the final analysis, we do want a plan that is approvable, or it will do us no good. However, I think our first focus has to be on having a plan that we believe is in the best interest of the children and the community. Yes, sir.
One final point, Chairman Prescott, and I think it goes along with what Chris was saying. The board that is currently sitting is not necessarily the same board that will be voting on this plan.
That's true.
Because we will be having an election for 7 permanent seats in August, and so it is not entirely certain that those 7 people who are sitting in those seats now will be sitting in those seats when the time comes for this plan to be voted on.
True. I think these are all good points. And again, we do have school board members with us tonight, and I would never want the impression out there that we were not wanting their input or wanting to stay communicative with them. We are. But we do have to create a balance that is appropriate, and these are a number of factors that we're looking at. So we will work out a process by which we continue to have some give and take, and we'll do the very best. As I say, we'll do the very best we can with that. All right, Nika?
So on the second page, there's a little bit more advice.
Some of this advice, you know, we are looking at, which is good, but go ahead.
The key theme about managing the scope and the expectation was an important one. In particular, I call your attention to the third one, which is about the fact that there is a lot of work that will happen post-consolidation. We are putting together a plan. It has a vision. All of the work doesn't happen now. And if that hasn't been communicated clearly, whether it be through the presentations in the listening session or what have you, we do want to make sure that that is being communicated as we talk about it. There was feedback that, is this time sufficient to be able to do it? The time is what the time is. It's in the bill. So I'm not sure that there's much we can do about that, although it does suggest going back and asking for more time. The communication is key. Obviously, it goes back to the engagement. Make sure that you're getting the communication out. There were specifics around the fact that there are miscommunications that are out now and being able to respond to them. Again, to the point that Kenya was making, on the communication committee in particular, there are 2 board members there that allows us to get frequently asked questions that are parallel, that go both from the TPC and similar, but different language because they have different authorities from the Shelby County School Board. So I think that that's something that we're working to keep aligned. In terms of the plan itself, these next 3 points are about things to think about in putting together the plan, and specifically ask that the best practices inside of the district be recognized, but also that we expand the universe to take into consideration best practices that are outside, both nationally and internationally. I think that that's aligned with the commentary that I've heard many times from people around the table. Again, just wanted to note the commonality of that advice being given and the fact that we were thinking about that prior to that. I will say that anytime you talk to 23 people, you have a continuum, and the next one is a good example of that continuum. Both engage the suburban community. There's a lot of fear from the suburban communities to engage the city because you guys are taking too much suburban community. Somewhere in between that, there were all the things in between that as well, but it's relevant, and you guys should all hear those are both opinions that are out there, particularly from partners that are as close as anybody in this. So if there's that from the school board, it's likely out in the community as well. And finally, obviously, there were conversations about the municipalities. We were having these conversations in the last couple of weeks where there's been a lot of conversation about and directly after the feasibility plans from the municipalities came out. And so there was advice on the fact that the municipality is the potential for municipal school districts were out there, and to respect the municipalities in this process, which again, these conversations were primarily prior to the decision by this board to invite the municipal mayors. And so I think that the likelihood is that was taken as a responsiveness that was welcome.
Are there any questions of Nika? Well, I'd like to thank you and your team for going through that, and I would like to say to Mr. Pickler and Mr. Jones that we would love for you to convey to the board that we appreciate their participation in these interviews, that we appreciate their candidness. I kind of like the fact that they say that we're looked at as the dream team, but they do say that we should be beware of that. I think that's kind of a good thing to be beware of. I used to say that though about guys I dated. They might all be good looking, but everybody gets old and not so good looking after a while. So don't put anybody up on the pedestal too much. But we do appreciate very much the comments, and I think we do take them seriously. And I am happy to say that many of these pieces of advice, I know that Ms. Bradshaw recognizes that, and Dr. Smirelli and Mr. Keel, who sit on the communications committee, that many of these suggestions are in the works to be done, and they will be. So thank you very much. All right. Goodness gracious, we're getting through. Yes, sir.
Mr. Hart had sent an issue to the executive committee, and I think we probably should report out what we decided on the charges.
Thank you for reminding me of that, Dr. Green. Mr. Hart, do you remember that last week you mentioned that the executive committee should look at ways that we might engage our state representatives and communicate with them? And so the executive committee did discuss that, and we felt that it would be a good thing or they asked that I engage in a conversation with Senator Norris. There may be others that I should speak with and just let him know what we're doing, try to clarify some of the comments that we've read in the paper. We have responded to our mayor's request last week and felt unanimously that we wanted to have the mayors in to talk with them, but these are some things that are going on, and we are connected to the state legislature, and we do know that there are pieces of legislation that can affect this body. So at this point in time, kind of some clarity, some reaching out, some understanding of, to the extent that we can, of what is desired, and then what we are doing is the way we handled that. So thank you, Dr. Green. We did want you to know we honored that suggestion. So our next meeting is next week, the 16th. We decided in the executive committee that we might want to, that we would like to start that meeting at 4:30. Daniel, you can't get here even at 5, can you? Oh, you're out of town. Okay. That we would start that meeting at 4:30 so that we could, if we have some business, we will probably dispense with our committee reports and just do minimal business and leave adequate time to visit with our municipal mayors, to have them to first make their presentation as to their plans, whatever they would like to present to us in that regard, and then have ample time for questions and conversation. So I would urge all of us to, if we have questions, to be prepared to ask them, and that we are looking forward to their visiting Mayor Luttrell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm really into structure when it comes to meetings like we're going to have next week.
We'd love to hear about that.
I think it would be good if. Oh, thank you. I think it would be good if we have specific questions that possibly involve some research. That we try to get those questions to the suburban mayors prior to next Thursday evening, to give them an opportunity to kind of do some research if they have to. But I would like to have this be as much of an informational session as possible, and as opposed to let me research that and get back with you. If we have some particular questions that relate to the complexities of finance, if we can maybe get those questions to them before the event and give them an opportunity to research it, it may help the discussion go a little bit better.
Okay. So you've heard the mayor's suggestion on that. I think that that is a reasonable suggestion for us to do our best to comply with. I would say that there is always a situation where when you are receiving a presentation that does bring up questions in your mind. And if this is an opportunity to have that dialogue, I think that we wouldn't want to limit our group to that, but we certainly could try as best we can if we have some things that we feel would require they're looking into. And we wouldn't want to go away with a lot of non-answers. I think that's what you're getting at, and then that would be good.
I might add to that. I know that Mayor McDonald's not here tonight, but I think Mayor Goldsworthy's
She
even
was
departed.
here, but she left. She left.
I was going to suggest that in reverse, we could also ask the suburban mayors if they have particular issues that they'd like for us to address, that they could get that information to us. But I can communicate that to Mayor McDonald if you would like.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a lady that is in the audience that I don't know that has raised her hand. I'm going to be polite and recognize you.
I'm here on behalf of Mayor McDonald, so I can relay that.
Okay. Okay. Good. All right.
And did we also invite their consultant?
We did, and really I think it would be well for me to send all of them an email this week and just reiterate that we would like for them to be here and be prepared to present to us whatever it is that their plan and those items that they would like to present, and that we have asked that their consultant accompany them, but that the presentation come from them. That is really the desire of the executive committee. Ms. Richards?
I'm just a little concerned. We have an hour and a half next week to hear from the mayors and to have our questions answered. And while I'm more than willing to agree with the mayor that it's no trouble if they care to provide questions to the TPC, I'd really like to see the focus in next week's meeting with its very limited time frame to be fully understanding their presentation and the questions that this team may have.
So that point of view is that this is really a time for the mayors to present to us and for us to have an opportunity to ask questions of them. And if possible, we can think ahead of those questions, and I would be able to forward them to them, but that primarily that would be our focus. Now, that's what I'm hearing from Ms. Richards. Am I hearing?
Is that contrary to what I said?
Well, not really, except what I'm hearing is that, quite honestly, what I'm hearing, and Ms. Richards, you correct me if I'm wrong, but that the primary focus would be for the mayors to present to us and then for us to have time to ask questions of them. I don't think that precludes them perhaps asking us a question, but that the focus is really for us to gain information from them.
Right. I mean, my only point was that we've got limited time. I expect there'll be a fair number of questions for us to ask them that we will want to have an opportunity to have fully addressed. If there are questions that they want to present to us, we can always invite them back for another meeting if there isn't enough time. But what I would hate to see this become is they present whatever they're going to present and then start posing a series of questions to us, and thereby preventing us from having an opportunity to fully explore their plans and their presentation.
Okay. So perhaps what I'm hearing is that the meeting will not be the last meeting, and that it could become a dialogue in which we become fully aware next week of what of an understanding of where they are coming from, and then if we need to have further dialogue and they have questions of us, that we could invite them at another time. Is that what you're saying? Now,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, I do like structure, and I promise you that I will handle this. But I think we'll probably there'll be a little flexibility, but I think that that we do want to be to use this time to understand what is that. That's why I think we are asking the mayors in, to give them an opportunity to speak to us, tell us themselves what they're wanting to do, and to try to understand that. And that is a two-way street. So we'll do the best we can, Mayor.
I trust you, Madam Chairman, that you will be fair to both sides.
All right, Mr. Spiller.
I can't imagine anything they could ask us so we could answer.
Yeah. Mr. Spiller.
All we're doing is gathering information. We can't answer the public. So how
You know what? That is that's a priceless comment, and I thank you for that. Oh man, we are in the we don't know yet stage. Basically, we really are. But these are leaders in our community. We'll certainly treat them with respect, and we know that they will do likewise. So, is there any other comment, Mr. Hart?
Not to change the subject, but I wanted to share with the group an experience I had this week. I'm a member of a small group at our church of 5 couples that are all grandparent age. And I just realized, interestingly, the subject we're studying is judgment and not being judgmental. But the thing has been an interest to me. Almost, I get interrogated every week. And I really didn't consider that they would be as up on their game as they have been so far. Now, granted, some of them have grandchildren in the school system and everything, and they have an interest from that aspect. But it has been very interesting to hear their questions, the depth of their questions, and just like what we've experienced somewhat in the public things, although, to be honest with you, their questions are even more interesting to me in what's transpiring. And so it's helped me with my insight into some things, just to listen and hear their thoughts. And I've thrown them back. How would you do it? If you were the dictator in designing this, how would you model this? So, I would encourage everybody, if you get an opportunity to dialogue, if it's just one person, do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Are there any other comments? All right. Do I hear a motion for the meeting to adjourn? Is there a second? There's been moved and seconded, so the meeting is adjourned.